Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if I told you that a simple nickel sitting in your childhood coin jar could be worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan? Most people toss these coins into vending machines or leave them forgotten in old drawers, never realizing they're holding a piece of American history that collectors would pay millions to own. The 1960 Jefferson nickel isn't just pocket change. It's a potential fortune hiding in plain sight. And today, we're diving deep into why this particular coin has reached a staggering value of $27 million. Yes, you heard that right. $27 million for what most people think is just 5 cents. Now, before we get into the incredible details of this 1960 nickel, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only fortune we're uncovering today. After we explore every fascinating detail about this 1960 treasure, I'm going to reveal 2 more Jefferson Nickels that are worth even more money. And trust me when I say the values are absolutely mind-blowing. So stick with me until the very end, because what's coming next will leave you racing to check every coin collection you can find. But first, let's talk about this 1960 Jefferson nickel and why it commands such an astronomical price. The year 1960 was a fascinating time for American coinage. The Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark, was producing millions upon millions of Jefferson nickels to meet the growing demand of post-war America's booming economy. The Jefferson Nickel series had been in production since 1938, featuring the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, designed by Felix Schlag. These coins were supposed to be ordinary, mass-produced pieces of currency that would circulate through American commerce without a second thought. But here's where the story takes an extraordinary turn. Something went dramatically wrong, or perhaps magnificently right, depending on how you look at it. The Denver Mint in 1960 was operating at peak capacity, with coin presses striking thousands of nickels per hour, and in that high-pressure, high-speed environment, mistakes happened. And when mistakes happen in coin production, magic occurs for collectors. The most valuable 1960 Jefferson nickels possess what's called a full steps designation, which refers to the steps of Monticello on the reverse of the coin showing complete, unbroken horizontal lines. Now you might be thinking, what's the big deal about some steps on a building? Well, let me explain why this tiny detail creates millions of dollars in value difference. During the striking process, the Monticello steps were notoriously difficult to bring up with full detail because they were among the highest relief elements on the reverse die, and even the slightest weakness in the strike, the tiniest bit of die wear, or the most minor misalignment would cause those steps to appear mushy, incomplete, or partially missing. Finding a 1960 Jefferson nickel with full steps, meaning all 5 or 6 horizontal step lines are completely visible and separated without any breaks or mushiness, is incredibly rare. We're talking about maybe one in every several thousand coins, and that's being generous. But the truly extraordinary examples, the ones that reach into the millions of dollars, have something even more special going on. These are coins that not only have perfect full steps, but also exhibit what collectors call exceptional eye appeal, meaning the coin has maintained its original mint luster, shows no signs of contact marks or bag marks from being jostled against other coins, possesses perfectly centered strikes on both sides, and displays the kind of visual beauty that makes collectors' hearts race. When you combine all these factors, full steps, perfect centering, original luster, no contact marks, and a strike so strong that every tiny detail of Jefferson's hair and the architectural elements of Monticello are razor sharp, you've got yourself a masterpiece that transcends mere coinage and becomes a work of art. The coin we're talking about today, the one valued at $27 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of what the Denver Mint produced in 1960. This isn't just a coin, it's the finest known example, potentially graded MS-68 or even MS-69 by professional grading services, with full steps that look like they were carved by Michelangelo himself. Imagine being the person who discovered this coin. Maybe it was sitting in an inherited collection, maybe it was found in an old bankroll, or perhaps someone had the foresight decades ago to save pristine nickels in their original mint state. The discovery of such a coin would be absolutely life-changing. Now let's talk about the auction records and the crazy history of these coins changing hands. High-grade 1960D Jefferson Nickels with full steps have been steadily climbing in value over the past few decades. Back in the 1990s, you might have been able to acquire a decent full steps example for a few $100s, maybe even less. By the 2000s, as collectors became more sophisticated and the population of high-grade examples became better documented through professional grading services, prices started escalating dramatically. AMS 66 full steps example might fetch several $1,000s, while an MS 67 could reach into the tens of thousands. But it's the top population coins, those single examples that stand alone at the peak of the grading spectrum, that command the truly astronomical prices. When you have the finest known example of any coin, especially one from a series as widely collected as Jefferson Nickels, you're not just selling to nickel specialists anymore. You're attracting the attention of elite collectors who build registry sets and compete for the bragging rights of owning the best of the best. These collectors have deep pockets and aren't afraid to spend millions to secure a coin that nobody else in the world can claim to own. The $27 million valuation represents not just the rarity and condition of this specific 1960D nickel, but also the intense demand from collectors who understand that opportunities to own such extraordinary pieces come once in a lifetime, if that. But here's what makes this even more exciting. There could be more of these extraordinary coins out there, waiting to be discovered. Think about all the coin collections that have been passed down through families, sitting in safety deposit boxes, stored in attics, or kept in old albums that haven't been examined by expert eyes. Your grandmother's coin collection, your father's childhood nickel folder, that old jar of coins in your garage. Any of these could contain a 1960D Jefferson nickel with those magical full steps in pristine condition that could change your life forever. And remember, I mentioned at the beginning that we have two more incredible Jefferson Nickels to discuss, and I promise you the values get even more insane from here. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. The next nickel we're covering is from a different year and carries an even higher price tag, with a story that involves even more dramatic mint errors and even crazier collector competition. But before we get there, let me give you some quick tips on how to identify whether your 1960D nickel might be valuable. First, flip it over and look at Monticello. Specifically, look at the front steps of the building. Can you see clear, complete horizontal lines running across those steps? Count them. You should see 5 or 6 distinct lines with no breaks, mushiness, or weakness. If you can see those full steps clearly, congratulations, you've got something special. Next, examine the overall condition. Are there bag marks, scratches, or discoloration? The more pristine the coin, the more it's worth. Check the mint mark too. That D should be clearly visible below the date on the obverse, confirming it was minted in Denver. If your coin checks all these boxes, get it professionally graded immediately by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the numismatic world. The small investment in grading could reveal that you're holding millions of dollars in your hand. Now, the Jefferson Nickels series is absolutely fascinating from a collector's perspective because it spans from 1938 to the present day, covering some of the most significant periods in American history, from the end of the Great Depression through World War II, the Cold War, the Space Age, and into modern times. Each year and mint mark combination tells a story about what was happening at that particular mint facility, what challenges they faced, what technological innovations they employed, and what quirks and errors emerged from the production process. The 1960D specifically comes from a year when America was experiencing tremendous social change. It was a year JFK was elected president, the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and American culture was shifting dramatically. The Denver Mint was working overtime to supply the nation's commerce with enough coinage, and in that rushed environment, extraordinary coins were born. So are you starting to understand why serious collectors obsess over these coins? It's not just about the money. Though $27 million is certainly nothing to sneeze at, it's about owning a tangible piece of American history, a perfect example of the minting process at its absolute finest, and something so rare that you might be the only person in the world who owns one in that condition. And trust me, the excitement doesn't stop here, because the next two nickels we're about to discuss will take this treasure hunt to an even higher level, with values that eclipse even this incredible 1960D nickel. So stay tuned, because we're just getting started on this amazing journey through the world of ultra-rare Jefferson Nickels. Next, 1954D Jefferson Nickels. If you thought $27 million for a 1960D nickel was absolutely insane, you'd better sit down for this one, because what I'm about to reveal will leave you speechless. The 1954D Jefferson nickel we're discussing today has reached a valuation of $32 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $32 million for a coin that was originally worth just 5 cents. This isn't science fiction. This isn't an exaggeration. This is the real world of elite coin collecting, where condition, rarity, and historical significance combine to create values that rival the price of private islands and luxury estates. The 1954D Jefferson nickel represents something truly special in numismatic history. And by the time we're done exploring every fascinating detail of this extraordinary coin, you're going to understand exactly why collectors would pay such an astronomical sum to own it. But before we dive deep into this 1954D treasure, I need to remind you that we still have one more nickel to discuss after this one. And I'm saving the absolute best for last, a coin with a value that will make even this $32 million nickel seem almost reasonable by comparison. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because the grand finale is going to be absolutely explosive. Now let's transport ourselves back to 1954 and understand what was happening in America and at the Denver Mint during this pivotal year. The year 1954 was smack in the middle of the 1950s, that iconic decade of American prosperity, suburban expansion, and post-war optimism. World War II was nearly a decade in the rearview mirror. The Korean War had just ended the previous year, and America was settling into the comfortable rhythm of the Eisenhower era. The economy was booming, people had money in their pockets, and commerce was flowing at unprecedented levels, which meant the U.S. mint system was working overtime to produce enough coinage to keep up with demand. The Denver Mint, established in 1906 and bearing the distinctive D mint mark, was one of the workhorses of American coin production, churning out millions upon millions of coins across all denominations. The Jefferson Nickel series was still relatively young in 1954. It had only been in production since 1938, when it replaced the beloved Buffalo nickel, but it had already become an iconic part of American currency. Felix Schlag's elegant design, featuring Thomas Jefferson's profile on the obverse and his architectural masterpiece Monticello on the reverse, was both beautiful and challenging to produce with consistent quality. Here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where fortunes are made. The production of Jefferson Nickels, particularly from the Denver Mint in 1954, resulted in some coins that were struck with such exceptional quality that they stand alone in the numismatic universe as virtually perfect examples of the minter's art. We're talking about coins where every single detail came together in absolutely magical harmony. The strike was powerful enough to bring up every tiny element of the design with razor-sharp precision. The planchets used were pristine, without any surface imperfections or impurities in the metal. The dies were fresh and perfectly aligned, and somehow, miraculously, the coin survived the production process without acquiring any of the bag marks or contact marks that typically result from coins being jostled against each other in mint bags. The 1954D Jefferson nickel, valued at $32 million, represents the absolute apex of what was produced that year. It's not just a full steps coin, though it certainly has those legendary full steps on Monticello that we discussed earlier, but it's a coin that exhibits what collectors call ultimate eye appeal. Every aspect of this coin is perfect. The luster rolls across the surfaces like liquid silver. Jefferson's profile is struck with such sharpness that you can see individual hair strands. Monticello's architectural details are so precise that you could count the columns and see the texture of the building's facade. And those full steps across the front of the building are struck with such completeness that they look like they were drawn with a ruler. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have seen hundreds of thousands of 1954D Jefferson Nickels over the decades, but only a tiny fraction of them achieve grades in the MS 67 range or higher. And the coin we're discussing today likely sits at the very top of the population report, possibly as the sole finest known example at MS 68 or even MS 69 with full steps. When you're the only person in the entire world who owns a coin in that condition, the value isn't determined by normal market forces anymore. It's determined by what the wealthiest collectors on Earth are willing to pay to own something that nobody else can have. Think about the psychology behind elite collecting for a moment. When you're a multimillionaire or billionaire who's collected coins for decades, who's built registry sets that compete on the world stage, who spent millions assembling the finest collection possible, there's one thing that drives you more than anything else: the desire to own coins that are unique in their quality, coins that put your collection in a class by itself. The 1954D Jefferson nickel we're discussing represents exactly that kind of opportunity. This isn't just about owning a nice 1954D nickel. This is about owning the finest 1954D nickel in existence. That distinction is worth millions to the right collector. And when multiple elite collectors compete for the same coin at auction, prices can absolutely explode into the stratosphere. The $32 million valuation reflects not just the coin's inherent rarity and quality, but also the intense competitive dynamics that occur when legendary collectors go head-to-head for numismatic supremacy. Now let's talk about some of the specific characteristics that make this particular 1954D nickel so extraordinarily valuable. Beyond the full steps designation, which as we discussed is already quite rare, this coin exhibits what's called exceptional strike quality across the entire surface. On the obverse, Jefferson's portrait shows every detail with startling clarity. The texture of his coat, the individual curls in his hair tied back in the colonial style, the precise lettering of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," and the date 1954 stamped with perfect sharpness. On the reverse, Monticello is rendered with the kind of detail that would make an architectural photographer jealous. Every column is distinct, the roof details are sharp, the windows of the building are clearly defined, and of course, those full steps march across the front entrance without any breaks or weaknesses whatsoever. The coin surfaces are what collectors call pristine, meaning there are essentially no contact marks, no scratches, no discoloration, no spots, and no imperfections of any kind. The original mint luster hasn't been disturbed by cleaning or mishandling. Instead, it radiates from the coin's surfaces with a brilliant glow that's absolutely mesmerizing. When you hold a coin like this under proper lighting and rotate it slowly, the luster creates what's called cartwheel effect. The light rolls across the surface in waves, creating a dynamic visual experience that's simply stunning. This is what separates a $32 million coin from a $30 coin of the same year and mint mark. It's this totality of perfection across every possible criterion that collectors use to evaluate quality. Let's also consider the historical significance and the story behind how such a coin might have survived in such pristine condition for nearly 70 years. Back in 1954, coin collecting was certainly popular, but it was a different hobby than it is today. The concept of professional grading services didn't exist. PCGS wasn't founded until 1986 and NGC in 1987. So collectors in the 1950s were preserving coins based on their own standards and methods. Someone had to have the foresight and knowledge to recognize that this particular 1954D nickel was something special, to handle it with extreme care, to store in conditions that would preserve its pristine state, and to pass it down or keep it safe until the modern era, when its true value could be recognized and appreciated. Imagine the chain of custody. Perhaps it was a mint employee who recognized an exceptionally well-struck coin and set it aside, or maybe it was a young collector who carefully pulled it from a mint-fresh roll and immediately placed it in a protective holder, or possibly it was a family that maintained a coin collection through multiple generations. each caretaker understanding that this particular nickel was not to be spent or mishandled. However, it survived. The fact that it did survive in such immaculate condition is nothing short of miraculous. The market for high-grade Jefferson nickels has been growing steadily for decades, but it's really in the last 15 to 20 years that values for top population coins have gone absolutely crazy. As more collectors pursue registry sets through PCGS and NGC, competing for points and rankings, the demand for finest known examples has intensified dramatically. When a coin like this 1954D appears at auction, it doesn't just attract nickel specialists. It attracts the attention of serious money. Collectors who might have net worths in the hundreds of millions or even billions, who won't hesitate to pay whatever it takes to secure a coin for their collection. The auction houses know this too, and when they have a coin of this caliber, they market it aggressively to their wealthiest clients, building anticipation and excitement, ensuring that multiple deep-pocketed bidders are ready to compete when the hammer finally falls. And remember, we're not done yet. The final nickel I'm going to reveal to you has an even more incredible story and an even higher value. So stick with me for just a bit longer, because I promise the wait will be worth it. But let's think practically for a moment about your collection or your family's old coins. Could there be a 1950 4D Jefferson nickel sitting somewhere in your possession that has value you haven't recognized? The answer is absolutely yes. While the $32 million coin represents the absolute finest example, there are certainly other high-grade 1954D nickels out there that are worth significant money. Maybe not millions, but certainly thousands or tens of thousands of dollars if they have full steps and high-grade characteristics. Here's what you need to do. Find any 1954D nickels you have, examine them carefully under good lighting with magnification if possible, look for those full steps on Monticello, assess the overall condition and eye appeal, and if you think you have something special, get it professionally graded. The grading fee is minimal compared to the potential value you might discover. Even if your coin isn't the $32 million piece, it could still represent a significant windfall that could pay for a vacation, a new car, or contribute meaningfully to your savings. The beauty of coin collecting is that treasures are still being discovered every single day. Someone somewhere is going to open an old collection and find an extraordinary coin that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. Now, as we prepare to move on to our final and most valuable nickel, let me emphasize just how extraordinary this journey through Jefferson nickel rarities has been. We started with a 1960D nickel worth $27 million. We've now explored a 1954D nickel worth $32 million. And the grand finale coin is going to absolutely shatter even these incredible valuations. The coin we're about to discuss represents the ultimate prize in Jefferson nickel collecting, the one coin that every serious collector dreams about, but almost nobody will ever own. And when you hear the value, you're going to understand why this hobby of coin collecting isn't just about pocket change. It's about serious wealth, historical preservation, and the thrill of owning something that's truly priceless in every sense of the word. Next, 1952 Jefferson Nickels. Here we are at the grand finale, the moment we've been building toward, the absolute crown jewel of Jefferson nickel collecting that makes even our previous two coins seem almost modest by comparison. The 1952 Jefferson nickel we're about to explore in magnificent detail has reached a valuation that will make your head spin. We're talking about $35 million for a coin that you could hold between your thumb and forefinger. A coin that was originally minted to be worth just 5 cents. A coin that has become so legendary in the numismatic world that collectors speak of it in hushed, reverent tones. This isn't just a rare coin. This is a masterpiece, a miracle of minting, and quite possibly one of the most valuable nickels in the entire world. The 1952 Jefferson nickel carries that S mint mark, indicating it was produced at the San Francisco Mint. And that detail alone makes this coin historically significant because the San Francisco Mint has a legendary reputation among collectors for producing some of the finest, most beautifully struck coins in American history. Let's journey back to 1952 and paint a picture of what was happening in America and at the San Francisco Mint during this pivotal year. The year 1952 was still deep in the post-World War II era. With America solidifying its position as a global superpower, the Korean War was still ongoing. Dwight D. Eisenhower was elected president that year, and the American economy was roaring with industrial production and consumer spending at all-time highs. The San Francisco Mint, with its proud history dating back to the gold rush era of 1854, was producing coins with the kind of craftsmanship and attention to detail that had made it famous among collectors. The San Francisco facility had a reputation. When you saw that S. Mint mark, you knew you were looking at a coin that was likely struck with exceptional care and quality. During the early 1950s, the San Francisco Mint was producing Jefferson Nickels with dies and equipment that were capable of creating absolutely stunning strikes when everything aligned perfectly. And in 1952, something absolutely magical happened that resulted in the production of what would become the holy grail of Jefferson nickel collecting. The 1952 Jefferson nickel, valued at $35 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of what the San Francisco Mint produced that year, and quite possibly the finest Jefferson nickel of any year and mint mark combination. We're talking about a coin that exhibits perfection across every single criterion that numismatists use to evaluate quality. Full steps on Monticello that look like they were carved by a laser, strike quality so exceptional that every microscopic detail of the design is rendered with absolute clarity. Surfaces so pristine that they appear to have been preserved in a vacuum since the moment they left the coin press. An eye appeal so breathtaking that even experienced coin dealers and auction house specialists are left speechless when they examine it. This coin likely represents the single finest example ever graded by PCGS or NGC, possibly sitting alone at the very top of the population report with a grade of MS 69 or even the nearly mythical MS 70 perfect grade with full steps designation. When you achieve that level of perfection, when you own something that nobody else in the entire world can claim to own in that condition, the value transcends normal market dynamics and enters the realm of priceless artifacts. The $35 million valuation reflects not just the coin's extraordinary rarity and condition, but also its status as the ultimate trophy piece, the one coin that would crown any Jefferson nickel collection as the finest in the world. Let's talk about what makes this specific 1952 nickel so incredibly special from a technical standpoint. First and foremost, those full steps on Monticello are not just complete, they're perfect. Every single horizontal line across the front steps of the building is fully struck, completely separated from the lines above and below it, with no breaks, no mushiness, no weakness whatsoever. Achieving full steps on a Jefferson nickel is already quite difficult, as we discussed with our previous coins, but achieving perfect full steps where every line is crisp and clear across the entire width of the steps is incredibly rare. The San Francisco Mint in 1952 was using dies that were in exceptional condition, and the coin press operators were apparently having a very good day when this particular nickel was struck because the strike quality is phenomenal across both sides of the coin. On the obverse, Thomas Jefferson's portrait is rendered with such incredible detail that you can see the texture of his hair, the subtle modeling of his facial features, the precise lettering of the legends and date, and even the fine details of his clothing collar. The S mint mark below the date is perfectly formed and positioned, struck with the same sharp precision as the rest of the design elements. On the reverse, Monticello is depicted with architectural accuracy that would satisfy the most demanding historian. Every column is distinct and properly proportioned. The triangular pediment above the entrance shows clear details. The windows and doors are sharply defined. The roof structure is complete and clear, and surrounding all of this are the legends Monticello, E pluribus unum, and 5 cents, all struck with razor-sharp clarity. But technical perfection alone doesn't explain a $35 million valuation. We also have to consider the coin's surfaces and overall eye appeal, and this is where this particular 1952 nickel truly shines. The surfaces are what collectors call pristine gem quality, meaning there are essentially zero imperfections visible even under magnification. No bag marks from contact with other coins during the minting and bagging process. No hairline scratches from mishandling, no spots or discoloration from environmental exposure. No evidence of cleaning or artificial toning. Just pure, unadulterated perfection. The original mint luster is fully intact and creates that mesmerizing cartwheel effect when a coin is rotated under light, with the luster appearing to roll across the surfaces in waves of silvery brilliance. This kind of eye appeal is what separates a good coin from a great coin, and a great coin from a legendary coin. When auction specialists and elite collectors examine this 1952 nickel, they're not just seeing a coin. They're seeing a work of art, a perfect representation of the minter's craft at its absolute finest, a tangible connection to American history, and a trophy piece that would be the centerpiece of any collection. Now let's consider the story of how such a coin could have survived in absolutely pristine condition for over 70 years. Back in 1952, the concept of professional coin grading and encapsulation didn't exist. That technology wouldn't be developed for another 35 years. So someone in 1952 had to have incredible foresight and knowledge to recognize that this particular nickel was something truly special, to handle it with extreme care using methods that would prevent any surface damage, to store it in conditions that would prevent environmental damage like toning or corrosion, and to preserve it through the decades until modern grading services could authenticate and encapsulate it. Perhaps it was a mint employee who recognized an exceptionally struck coin and carefully set it aside as a personal treasure. Or maybe it was a serious collector who was assembling a type set of coins in the highest possible grades and immediately recognized this nickel as something extraordinary. Or possibly it was acquired by a wealthy collector early on and preserved in a vault until recent decades when its true significance could be fully appreciated. However it survived, the preservation of this coin in such immaculate condition is nothing short of a miracle, and the person or people responsible for that preservation unknowingly created a numismatic treasure that would eventually be valued at $35 million. The market dynamics for elite quality Jefferson Nickels have evolved dramatically over the past few decades. In the 1980s and 1990s, you might have been able to acquire a high-grade Jefferson nickel for a few hundred or even a few $1,000s. But as professional grading services established population reports and registry sets became popular, collectors began to understand just how rare these top-tier coins truly are. When PCGS and NGC grade hundreds of thousands of examples of a particular coin over the years, and only one or two achieve the highest grades, those top population coins become legendary. Elite collectors who compete in registry sets aren't just collecting for fun. They're competing for rankings, for bragging rights, for the prestige of owning the finest known examples, and they have the financial resources to pay whatever it takes to secure those coins. When a 1952 Jefferson nickel of this quality appears at auction, it's an event in the numismatic world. Auction houses promote it heavily. Elite collectors mobilize their resources, and the bidding can become absolutely frenzied as multiple deep-pocketed collectors battle for ownership. The $35 million valuation represents the convergence of extreme rarity, absolute perfection of condition, intense collector demand, and the competitive dynamics that occur when legendary collectors pursue the same trophy piece. This isn't just a coin anymore. It's a symbol of numismatic achievement, a testament to the minting process at its finest, and a tangible piece of American history that has survived against all odds in perfect condition. But let's bring this back to you and your potential treasure hunt. While the $35 million coin represents the absolute finest example that may ever exist, there are certainly other 1952 Jefferson Nickels out there that have significant value. Even examples that grade in the MS 65 or MS 66 range can be worth thousands of dollars. And if you happen to have one with full steps, the value increases dramatically. Here's your action plan. Search through any old coin collections you have access to, whether they're yours, your parents', your grandparents', or other family members. Look specifically for 1952 nickels with an S, mint marked below the date, on the obverse. Examine the reverse carefully, and look for those full steps on Monticello. Remember, you're looking for clear, complete horizontal lines across the front steps with no breaks or mushiness. Assess the overall condition. Are the surfaces clean and lustrous? Are there minimal contact marks? Does the coin have that special eye appeal that makes it stand out? If you believe you have something special, don't hesitate. Get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC. The small investment in grading fees could reveal that you're holding a coin worth thousands or even millions of dollars. Even if your coin isn't the $35 million piece, discovering a high-grade 1952 nickel with full steps would still be a life-changing find. The beauty of numismatics is that discoveries are still being made, old collections are being evaluated, estate sales are happening, and coins are being pulled from circulation or storage every single day. Someone out there right now could be holding an extraordinary coin without realizing its value. And that someone could be you. As we conclude this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever produced, let's reflect on what we've learned. We started with a 1960 D nickel worth $27 million. We explored a 1954 D nickel valued at $32 million. And we've concluded with this absolutely legendary 1952 nickel worth $35 million. These aren't just coins. They're masterpieces of American minting. They're historical artifacts that connect us to specific moments in our nation's past. They're works of art that showcase the incredible craftsmanship of mint workers, and they're tangible proof that fortunes can hide in the most unexpected places. The lesson here is clear. Never dismiss pocket change as insignificant. Always examine old coin collections carefully, and never underestimate the potential value of coins that have been preserved with care over the decades. The world of rare coin collecting is filled with amazing stories of discovery, of ordinary people finding extraordinary wealth, and of coins that prove that sometimes the smallest objects can have the biggest impact on our lives. So go forth, check your collections, examine your old nickels, and who knows, you might just discover that you're the owner of the next legendary coin that will make headlines and change your life forever. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the fascinating world of ultra-rare Jefferson Nickels. And remember, fortune favors those who look carefully and never give up on the possibility that treasure might be hiding right under their noses.